4 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the February 21st, 2022 meeting of the Kerrville Economic Improvement Corporation. And do I have any volunteers to lead us in the invocation?
I'll be glad to.
Thank you, Gary.
Join with me in prayer. Father God, we come before you this afternoon asking for your wisdom and your patience and your compassion. Help us to make good decisions. Be with our members that were unable to attend today. And again, just give us your wisdom. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Where's my? Do we have anybody signed up to speak today? Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the EIC meeting held on January 24th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Anybody have any discussion on those? If not, raise your hand if you approve. That carries unanimously. All right, Mr. Salinas, you got a report for us?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll be having a brief report today. So I'm going to start with Brian Daniels' visit last month when he came into town. He's the commissioner and the chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission. Some of the takeaways from his visit, specifically in the meetings and in the luncheon, I believe some of you all were part of that. He said, we are not in the great resignation. And he was referring to the fact that there's a lot of people that have been quitting their jobs, not just in Texas, but throughout the United States, but more so in the state of Texas. And experts, dubbing it, the great resignation. He said, we're actually experiencing the great re-evaluation. So allow me to explain. In Texas, we're adding 40 to 50,000 new jobs per month. Right now, the Texas Workforce Commission website, they've got 800,000 jobs that are available and increasing. And on top of that, our state is growing at a steady 5% rate. A lot of those jobs that are available right now, they're in that middle skill set. So what people have done, and because of the pandemic, they actually had time to kind of think about what they wanted to do, almost kind of like what they want to do with their lives. It's kind of like, okay, let's take a step back and reevaluate where we are. So what they did is they figured that if we could get a better job just by obtaining a certification, industry certification, or an associate's degree, which could be 2-3 months up to 2 years to get one of those certifications or a degree. So they went out and did that. So hence the great reevaluation. So that's created a trickle-down effect and really put pressure on the service-oriented industry, which is your local shops, eateries, and businesses. So people, again, are not quitting their jobs for going across the street, to their competitors for 25 cents more. They're actually doing it as a career move. And again, that's why it's the great reevaluation. And clearly, that's what we're seeing in Kerrville. I mean, because a lot of the calls that we're getting, in addition to the medical sector, that's just a totally separate one. That's hurting throughout the entire state. But a lot of the calls are from some of the local shops, some of your smaller businesses. And now we can kind of see it's that upskilling into that middle skill set where people are moving up and creating a void. Locally, our unemployment rate, we're at about 3.6%. That's down from 4% and 4.2% the prior 2 months. We expect this rate to continue. Well, it'll probably increase a little bit, but it'll probably drop the closer we get to summer and to some of the holidays. And we'll probably, in all likelihood, going to reach the pre-pandemic levels when we were at about 2.8% to 3.2%. So we're getting close to that. What's interesting is that our sales tax revenues, I mean, we just continue to have record-breaking numbers every month and every month. So again, you take those two factors and the reevaluation, it just puts a further strain on our service sector. Moving on to project activity, there's really no movement on the major projects that we have at the time. We were contacted by our friends at the San Antonio Economic Foundation about a particular call center that was looking in the area. Great call center project. Unfortunately, we're unable to put in for the project. We didn't have both the space or the actual availability of a workforce for what they were looking for. But it's good to see that we're on the radar of some of these companies, and again, that San Antonio is reaching out to us and looping us into some of their opportunities. We did have 3 companies. Actually, it's one major company and 2 entrepreneurs that are looking to set up a shop here in Kerrville. It's still very preliminary. If they come into the area, they would be expanding the footprint as it pertains to the craft agriculture sector and extending that spirits trail, down from 290. Well, we already have that, but really cementing that trail down here. Very preliminary, but more on that as we start to further develop those projects. Killdeer Mountain Manufacturing, the KDC board had the opportunity to tour KMM's temporary facility, which is out on the city's west side. It's on Cobbler Lane, just before you get to Ingram, is that industrial area out there. And it's about 15,000 square feet. Actually, I think you all are going to be touring it next month. And they've got about 14 employees, and they are hiring and training 4 to 6 employees per month, or cohorts per month, and those are local employees. And they anticipate to be between 50 to 60 employees by year's end, which is when they'll make the transition into the permanent facility out by the airport. And in the interim, we're also working with our corporate out of North Dakota, as well as the governor's office here in Austin, as it pertains to some of the pending agreements and some of the incentives. So we're kind of going back and forth. Again, a year and a half out from the announcement, but there's still a lot of work to be done as far as working with the company and government as well.
Gil, is KDC or KMM tracking where these employees live?
So they've been pretty open about that because they have to provide that to the governor's office. Governor's office says as long as they're from the state of Texas. For us, I think 60% of that has to be within the Kerr County line, I believe, in the agreement. But for the most part, the first ones that they brought in, which is the first 6, 7, which is upper management, they came in from North Dakota. And they had a long list of people from up there that needed to come in. And the rest have been hired locally. Just one little side story. I was with the plant manager last week. I think it was last week. And he told me that he had a kid, well, not a kid, early 20s, came into the office one morning and just kind of started asking about the company, so on and so forth. So he gave him his time. It's like, all right, let's talk. And, he's, recently, he's been married a couple of years, has a baby, young family, and, he's a Ivy grad. And was kind of like, well, I was just very interested about, what you all were doing, and maybe it's a fit for me, and I'm just not too sure. And the guy said, you know what, let me just go ahead and fill out an application. So he called his HR in North Dakota and said, like, hey, just screen this kid real quick, and, I kind of like what I'm seeing. And next day, they brought him in for an actual interview, and I think that was on a Monday. So by Wednesday, he was already on the floor working. And he told me, like, this is... for us, this is godsend. This is exactly what we're looking for. They're young, they have a young family, they're in that middle skill set. He's lacking some of the skills, but he has no idea the training and the schooling that we're going to put him through and the career that he's going to have with our company. He just has no idea right now. He's just getting started. And, I just, I get just goosebumps right now thinking about that and retelling that story of why we do what we do is for people like them to have those opportunities. So again, that was just a side note on going back to your question.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in closing, the Economic Summit will be there next week. Actually, yes, it's next week. So we'll be part of a panel speaking with the Chamber as well as the CVB. And then the stakeholder retreat, that is already scheduled for April 4th. If you haven't received a save the date, you'll get one. That's on April 4th, Monday, from 12 to 3. Still haven't determined a location yet. But again, those are, the first one we did was when I first got here 3 years ago. So anticipate to have some meaningful and some very different conversations and discussions, from then to today, especially with what we have going on. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
All right, I see we have the entire financial brain trust here with us. So who gets to present today?
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
I am presenting January financials today. Okay, so right here on your first slide, you have your statement of activities, and we're looking at the second column, current period. So your sales and use tax for this month was $421,000, and that is a 26% increase over January 2021 actuals. So that did include about $57,000 in future payments. So after adjusting those out, that's a 20% increase over January 2021. So pretty good still. This puts you year to date in sales tax collections at $1.5 million, and your budget estimate for this time of year, we expect you to be at about $1.292 million, so or 30% of your budget. So you have surpassed that by $248,000. Sales tax, we continue to see strong contributions from retail, food service, manufacturing, and wholesale trade. Those are usually the top payers. We have received the February sales tax, and EIC's portion is $473,000. That initial calculation, that reflects that to be a 9% increase over last February. So it's still trending pretty high. We just got our report for that, so we'll get the payer breakdown by next go around. Okay, on to interest income. For the month of January, you earned $271, and that is actually $40 up from last month. And the pool is tracking a little bit. We've earned probably about 6 more basis points in the last 2 months, so we're seeing a little bit uptick. Down to your expenditures, we have your monthly administrative fees to the city for $16,250. We made the quarterly payment to KDC for $78,000, and then a monthly budget transfer of $90,000. And then down here in your project section, we have the second payment that went out to Arcadia Live. That contract is done. That was paid in full. And no more activity in your projects for the month. So your change in net position was $36,000. And overall, your net change to date is $557,000.
Before you leave that page, remind me, why did we have our budget estimate for interest income so high?
That was early on in the budget process, and I think we were estimating 50 basis points. I mean, we dropped down to nothing, so it's kind of left at that since the budget time. But over on your cash flow, we've adjusted according to what the trends are currently.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, second slide is your cash flow forecast, and your first column is just all your activity from October through January today. Down at the bottom, you see your ending cash balance at $3.297 million. And then your columns to the right are the remaining FY22 projections. So on your revenue numbers, your sales tax has been adjusted based on the current trends. We kind of have those about 10% higher than last year's numbers coming in. And then your investment income, about $250 a month for the moment. But we'll be adjusting those quarterly as time goes by. Expenditure section, those are pretty set month to month, and then nearing the bottom are your project dollars that we expect you to pay out throughout the end of the year. In the bottom you have your cash balances. Okay, and then your last slide is your financial analysis. So your top chart are your project commitment balances as of January, at the end of January. So you see that Arcadia Live is paid in full, that'll be falling off, and then we have airport projects there, and then Sid Peterson Memorial. Your second chart is the sales tax, your numbers, basically the FY22 budget, their actual dollars have come in, and then your comparison to last year. And that'll just grow throughout the rest of the year. And then your bottom chart is your tax pool balance, so 11 basis points. The feds have 7 more meetings this year, so we'll see what they're doing. They're anticipating possibly 5 25 basis point hikes. Who knows, but something to look forward to on that. Any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
I see that I skipped item 5B, Kerrville Economic Improvement Corporation Project Status Update. You all got a sheet that Mr. Hoppy's provided with the 4 projects that are outstanding. Anybody have any questions or comments on those before we move on?
So we do on the lighting, that bid's been let, and
It is, yeah. We have awarded that project, and we've gotten the contract fully executed, and they have initiated that. So we just had a groundbreaking last week, actually. So
cool.
Where's Killdeer on their actual permanent facility?
So my understanding is that their building permit is approved, and so they are going through the construction process. I think they're working with their contractors to begin the work. So they're still, according to them, on schedule for a late December move-in when Boeing has their normal annual slowdown.
Great. All right, then we'll move on to item 6, update from the airport.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Rohr. I'm the airport manager at Kerrville Airport. How's everyone today? I'm here to give you like a brief update of where we are at the airport and what's been kind of happening around the airport. First off, I want to say that business is very strong out there right now. I'm very surprised every time I kind of come out here on an odd day. It gets busy, and so there's certain times which caught me off guard, which was like right before this ice storm came in. The Wednesday before the ice storm came in, it looked like a Friday afternoon on a summer day. It's like everybody was trying to come or go whichever way they were trying to get to. Either get out of Kerrville and go someplace warm, or get out of someplace and go someplace else. But it's really taken some really good. We're getting some really good positive recurring traffic in here. Our FBO, Kerrville Aviation, they hit a record amount of fuel sales that they have not yet ever hit in their 20 years of being at Kerrville. So in other words, it's based on gallons. It's not just based on cost, and their mix of the type of fuel they sell has increased. So there's a lot more jet fuel being sold than there is what we call 100 low lead, which is for planes like me, my plane that I would fly in. So we're getting a whole lot more jet traffic. They've also been approached by a couple of what they call fractional ownership folks that you might see here, or the guys that have their names on their golf shirts, the Wheels Up and the NetJet guys are coming in very regularly, and always a surprise. And we're just, every time I look out, I go, wow, we've got a lot of traffic out here right now. And so it feels good, it feels great. Over the year when we had, during COVID, when we thought we were going to be slowed down, we weren't. We stayed pretty steady the whole time. We were able to make improvements in the terminal building. So if you haven't been around, come by and see us. We remodeled the kitchen, we remodeled the restrooms, we got our conference room put together. It's a little bit easier. We're finally having meetings back in the conference room, so come join us on Wednesday. We'll be there. And then we've just kind of jazzed it up a little bit, so it looks a whole lot nicer. It always looked nice, but now it's kind of brought up without as well as our customers. So I'm pretty excited about what we've been seeing, our trending here at the airport. One of the other things is that we've been able to work with TxDOT on being able to keep all of our main runway, which is the one that's along Highway 27, up to date and up to snuff. So we've got a $1.8 million program with TxDOT for them to pay for 90%, we pay for 10%, to make sure that, the runway that everyone's coming in for stays in good shape, stays in, safety, as well as striping, and the pavement stays well, as well as the apron, which we have in front of the airport. And again, the apron that we have in front, if you come out of the terminal building and look at it, it's a huge apron for the size of the airport that we are. So it is a huge asset for us, and we're working with them to be able to get out there and clean up some of the concrete and get all the joints redone. So really working on making sure we're taking care of our assets. The other asset that is important asset to the airport is one of our hangars that was built in the 1980s, and it got reverted back to the airport maybe 10 years ago, maybe right about 10 years ago. And nothing worse than having a hangar come back to you with all sorts of issues with it. And it's been the poor stepchild for me since I've been there. So I've always been fussing with stuff. So we finally were able to get it to the point where it's really going to make its way. We replaced the doors, the hangar doors that were huge. There were hangar doors on both sides, so it was 2 sets of hangar doors that got replaced. And now we've got one of them as a helicopter, one of the medical helicopter guys. They used to have problems with opening and closing the doors. They press the buttons and now the doors open. Everybody's happy. We've gotten better air conditioning systems in there. Again, kind of did just an upgrade of all the public common areas that the guys share and work with. And they're now that all the work is done, they're happy to be back. So always like a happy tenant after we made a whole lot of noise there for about 6 months. So it's good to have them back. We're also working with the city and county. Both of them are sharing in cost to overlay one of our smaller runway, what we call our crosswind runway. So that's going to happen this summer. So we've been starting getting our engineering work, gathering our engineers to start our work on all of that. So all of those projects are kind of working our way ahead as we've been working through our list. We have just started our budget season, so we'll be working on putting together our capital priorities and our project priorities. So I normally send out a kind of little crazy list to everybody and have everybody put their priorities or what they think they've been working on or what everybody has an opinion on about what I should need to be working on. So that'll probably go out here in the next few weeks. But I kind of pulled my project priorities from last year and I went through them, and I was really pleased that we had really done a pretty good job on most of our projects that we were talking about and getting done. So we've been struggling with a T-hanger project, which I'm going to try to get this one off the ground here. Hopefully here in a couple months. TxDOT finally agreed for us to be able to do it ourselves instead of working through their process, which is a two-edged sword. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but I'll find out. And so we'll be working with, again, both the city and the county and everybody trying to work together to get this done. And that's where you have $100,000 invested, is within doing some site work right adjacent to where the T-hangers are. So once we get those things going and rocking and rolling and get things done, then we can start working on developing the additional site development work that would assist in folks who want to come to Kerrville and want to have a hangar or want to build a hangar, have a place to do it. I think our waiting list for hangars is up to about 30. I know Joe Kennedy has a lot of folks that have larger aircraft that would fit in hangars that I have, but doesn't need to have a huge one. So the site work that we would be good for somebody in between size, and we really don't have a place for them right now that would be workable if they wanted to have their own hangar. So I'm hoping that would be leveraged and keep working on it. So. The other project that you all have invested in is on what we call the Horseshoe. We continue to market it and talk to it about just about everybody that comes walking in the door. Hopefully we can find the right mix and the right combination of whether it's a user, it's a office user that needs space for a large aircraft, or it's a training school, it's a flight school, it's something in there, or maybe even it's another one of these helicopter folks that need to have a place to stay and live and work within those things. But we continue to market it to try and figure out what we can do to get that going and be able to move forward with that project. So those are the different things that I have going on. Trying to remember what else we've got happening in here, but we're looking forward to getting into our budget season for 2023, and then working on updating all of my little color boxes here, and hopefully working forward on some more things out there. So I'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Good report.
All right.
Thank you, Mary.
Certainly.
All right, next item on our agenda is an update on the Kerrville Sports Complex.
Good afternoon, EIC members. I'm Ashley Boyle, Director of Parks and Recreation. I'll be providing the update today. We also have Julie Davis with the CVB, and Nico Gonzalez, one of the owners of the DPAT organization, is here as well. Okay, so it's been a while since we've provided a report to you, so I thought it'd be good to give you a little bit of history before we delve into some of the data that we have. In 2015, the Calla Foundation began conversations with us regarding this project. They began some of their work on the land. The city and the EIC entered into the funding agreement at that time. In 2016, city contractors took over and began our part of the project, and then the complex opened in January of 2018. Reminder of the funding for this project: EIC was the main funder of this public-private partnership with a $9 million bond via debt service. The Calla Foundation provided $1 million in donation of land value. $2 million in cash, and additional capital funding for other project amenities such as the monument sign, soccer fencing, and then the traffic signals. I'd like to point out as a reminder, property taxes and property tax dollars were not utilized to build this complex. That's a common misconception that we see continuing to appear within the community, and that's just something that we're trying to correct. It was an EIC funded quality of life economic development project and it was not funded via property tax dollars. Again, to reiterate, the goal of the sports complex is to provide a place to play for locals and to provide an indirect economic impact to the community via hot and sales tax. If you recall, the complex is two-sided. Holdsworth Drive splits both of it. One side is soccer and one side is geared towards baseball, softball, and the DBAT building, which has a pro shop, pitching lanes, batting cages, concessions, and meeting spaces. And we have about 20 acres of irrigated soccer space that's a little bit flexible on how we set up the fields, but we typically have about 18 fields set up there. We did also receive another grant from the Calla Foundation most recently, a $500,000 grant split between 2 fiscal years. Year 1 was 2020. That was $300,000 specifically for Pod 3 field lighting. This was the only pod that did not have its own sports lighting. So now all baseball, softball fields do have lighting. And then year 2, we utilized the $200,000 for artificial turf improvements for the bullpens. These are some before and after pictures that I'm showing you. The dugouts, artificial turf in front of the wear areas, and then also artificial turf on the mound improvements. And then we also added a playground to the soccer side of the complex as well. So we were excited to add addition over there. We did a ribbon cutting a couple of months ago for that. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our talented and dedicated sports complex team. This division has a division of 6 staff. With Shane Heffernan as the sports facilities manager, they really make sure to take a great care of the complex and make sure it's maintained in high quality, top-notch condition. The city provides all of maintenance for the outside and exterior of the complex. DBAT is our tenant and they provide all of the maintenance on the inside of the building except for large capital expenses such as HVAC and things of that nature. And their rent is performance-based, which we will discuss in just a second. We also wanted to remind you that we do have the reuse pond out there, so we're not using potable water to irrigate the fields. We're using reuse water, which vastly conserves our drinking water in addition to our water bill. And it's a 1.5 million gallon pond. Okay, the soccer side is home to several youth organizations in our community, which we're very excited about. And as a reminder, we do not charge the youth soccer organizations to utilize the soccer field, so they play there for free. We see about 1,500 soccer players per year, with fall being the largest season. And then the baseball, softball side has 11 fields with 3 pods. And DBAT is our tenant, like I mentioned, so they program all of the activities on the baseball, softball side of the complex. Okay, here's a graphical representation of the number of tournament teams that DBAT has brought forth since the complex opened in 2008. 2008, they had 601, 2019, 606, 2020, 938, and I will say this was a big jump in 2020 due to COVID-19. It had the opposite impact of most COVID impacts. We actually performed very highly, and this is because most of the regional facilities were actually still closed after the governor allowed us to open back up. So we were one of the few that was open and welcomed these tournaments. And then last year they had 502, and then right now they are on track with 31, and of course it's February, so they just started ramping up their tournaments. And as a reminder, the performance is based on a rent model. Annual performance metric for total tournament teams is 400 teams, so they are meeting that threshold for their zero-based rent performance. Okay, here's some more data on their activity types for the last 3 years. In 2020, they had, well, actually I'll go ahead and get through the comprehensive total. So non-tournament games, this is all games that are exactly what it sounds like, non-tournament. This is like league games, rentals, things like that. They had 322 total field rentals. Over the last 3 years, they've had 553. total tournaments, 41 and a half, and it says a half because some of those split between 2 different months. Total tournament players, 18,223, and total tournament teams, 1,462. And here's a couple, the next 2 slides are graphs that show cell data that was provided to us by the CVB. This is actual real good data. It's over the past 5 years since the complex opened. And it counts cell phone data that has their location on that live outside a 50-mile radius. How they know you live outside a 50-mile radius is beyond me, but I'm sure Julie can explain it and can answer specific questions if you have any. So if you look at the unique visitors that we've had over the past 5 years, we've had 74,436 visitors to the complex, 399,453 days spent at the complex. Average trip is about 2 days, 2.5 days, and the number of trips, 154,455. With in the top, if you look in the bottom right corner, it has the top markets. This is based on the states. Texas, of course, is number 1, and then we have California, Oklahoma, Florida, New Mexico, and Louisiana that are also represented by our top markets. So these are people that are coming to the complex to play in tournaments, and we are seeing a high weekend traffic as we're kind of expecting. And then the last slide looks basically the same except for the top markets is showing the cities. Again, all of them are in Texas for the top markets, and they're San Antonio, Austin, New Braunfels, Houston, Corpus Christi, and Lubbock. And my last slide I have for you just shows a couple of graphics that show our hotel motel tax and our sales tax trends over the past several years. It's hard to identify and pinpoint exactly the economic impact of the sports complex, but it's clear that trend-wise for both, they have increased and accelerated. And you know, based on the data, the cell phone numbers, we're seeing the trips, and we're seeing it correspond with our tax and sales tax trends as well. And that's all I have for you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
No question. Maybe for Nico. My question would be, as a parent of someone that plays select baseball, and I know that we don't find out if a tournament makes or not until 2 days before.
Yeah.
We've had, my experience has been over the last 3 years in select baseball that we've had several tournaments planned for the DBAT facilities, the baseball facilities that haven't made. So I guess my question is, what do you think we could do to position ourselves even better for bringing in tournaments and teams, to come and play on the weekends?
Yeah, since I took over in February 2020, that first year where we were able to do very well because of COVID going on, and we were really the only place to play.
That was the only year we played there.
yeah. And so this last year, once everything opened back up, at least in the summer months, UTSA was open again, and Trinity, and so kids wanted to go play, at least the high schoolers, in front of colleges for the first time in a year, because they didn't get to do anything last year. So numbers were down. People promised us the year before, hey, we'll come back out next year. We said, okay, we'll put you in, we'll pencil you in. Well, they're just playing the wait game so that they understand, hey, COVID might still be going on, so we want to make sure we book out these weekends, and it ended up hurting us last year. So kind of some learning curve for us last year. Coming into this year, like this coming weekend, we're going to have all 11 fields filled up, and the whole park's going to be, I think right now we're up to 72 teams. What I did to change the tournaments not making was I said, all right, if you're going to be a tournament host here, which is Perfect Game, 5 there's some different branding out there that do stuff. I said, I need $1,000 up front before you even do anything here. So I kind of put them in a place where it's now it's money out of their pocket, or it's going to make them work harder. And so with some
pushback on that.
Not necessarily.
How many do you have? How many of the different leagues do you are?
So like this weekend, it's a league called Pastime Baseball. They're typically ran out of McAllister Park. I got them to move over here, which was huge for us, because obviously it's really hard to get. You have probably 1,000 or so teams in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And out here, we probably have about 12 teams.
Right.
So the difference is tremendous.
Right.
And so to get them to say, hey, I'm going to leave McAllister Park, where it's a 10-minute drive, to go all the way to Kerrville, it's tough to do. And
What
so
makes that? What did you do to make that be?
it's the park. The park is tremendously better than McAllister Park. Anything that they really have in all of San, even Northrop and Bernie, our park.
been,
Yeah. I mean the restrooms here. You know, restrooms is a big deal for parents. Concession stands, how those are run, are a big deal for parents. So they love. All we have to do is get them out here, and once we get them out here, we at least get them once or twice a month, and that's our goal, is to have 2 tournaments a month that we know we're going to make for sure. The other 2 weekends, we're going to put them out there. If they don't make, they don't make, but we're trying to make sure that we get 2 a month here. And so far this year, you know, this February, we had one last weekend. We're having one this next weekend. March, we have 2 coming up. And so we're staying on that 2 track right now for sure. We have one every weekend, but that's kind of where we're at. But hopefully, you know, we've learned from our mistakes and we'll get better.
Yeah. And do you think that there's any reason? Have you heard any reason from parents as to why, other, I guess, convenience being a major one with how close they are to, and if they're in the cities? I mean, is it, you know, have you ever heard a parent talk about hotel inventory or any other reasons that may not?
They're saying hotel prices are really high. I haven't paid much attention to it. I know that I've heard anywhere from $160 to $180 a night. And so the hard part about baseball, as you probably know, or softball, if you're a 7 p.m. game, how it works is Saturday you get seated, it's pool play for Sunday. You could be coming back at 8 a.m. to play. So a lot of those families last minute try to get a hotel if they know that they got seated last, and they're finding out, well, we might as well go stay in Bernie because it's cheaper, but it's a shorter drive than to stay in Kerrville. So I've seen some prices, not a big variety of hotels. I've seen that issue a little bit come up. People love the RV parks. They'll bring their RVs out here. We've started to reach out to Midland and San Angelo a lot more. They don't have a lot of tournaments there that make, so try to bring them down here. So yeah, hotels has been an issue as far as just price-wise. Like people are picking Bernie over here for those reasons.
Thank you.
Cool.
Any other questions?
I've got a couple of questions. Maybe these are more for Ashley. So as far as just the budget impact, the impact to the city, not knowing the structure of the DBAT lease, can you give me some idea, like what is the cost to the city of whatever maintenance, oversight of the facility?
Sure. Yeah, our FY22 budget's about $622,000 for the sports complex.
And then as far as the economic impact, I think those were total numbers as far as hot and sales tax, but based on what we know about how many visitors are coming, is there any way to extrapolate that data to get a guess on what the direct impact would be for the facility?
It's really difficult to try to pull that data. That's a conversation that we've had with the CVB, and I know I've had with our finance director too. It's just we don't necessarily get that reporting information and going to each hotel and asking, and for them it'd be relying on them to track and ask questions and go to the restaurants and ask. It's difficult to extrapolate that information.
I just thought maybe there would be some sort of just placeholder type numbers for average visitor expenditures and things like that.
Yeah, there's some models that are run, but
CVB has provided some of that data.
They've provided similar data, but again, it's just
they
it's good.
Spend X amount averagely, per visit per person, and so
visitors per person, X amount a day, things like that. It's not exact numbers, but it's pretty close.
It's pretty staggering.
Yeah, my favorite story is the Lennar Homes executive that brought his son down for a tournament and contacted the city manager on Monday, and fast forward to now, and we've got some good outlook on the horizon. Had never been to Kerrville before. Drove around the city while they were here that weekend. You just never know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to retire into executive session under section 551.071 to discuss James Avery Craftsman.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn to executive session under 551.071.
Second?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Adjourn into executive session.
Thank y'all.
All right, 4:47, we're out of executive session.
Good to know.
No action is needed, is that correct, for any items in executive session? Does anyone have any items for future agendas or announcements? Nope.
Just a reminder, we will have the tour of Kildeer's current facility on March 21st. That'll be at 3 p.m. before your regular meeting, so we will be posting that up. And then we'll have the regular meeting here at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So
Yes,
just
will you send us out
there and then come here.
Yes, sir.
an invite for that so we can all get it on our calendars? Okay. All right, with that, we are adjourned.
Very good.